This week on The Record, the end of an era. Senator Dick Durbin bows out, his timely exit swinging the doors wide open for a dramatic Democratic primary contest heading into the decisive midterms. Next candidate up, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton jumps right in. Who else could join soon? In St. Louis County, he's running again. County Executive Sam Page seeks a third term. Why his own party could challenge him. Who should control St. Louis police? And will a judge ultimately make that call? Why Board of Aldermen President Megan Green went her own way in court? And how a judge is firing back. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. A tug of war over the city police department has top leaders in new roles staking out some familiar ground. Governor Mike Kehoe visiting St. Louis this week, addressing some recent criticism of that state takeover of the police department from new mayor Kara Spencer.
You've got a new mayor. She's very willing, open to make sure community safety is something that's very important to her. I've talked to the mayor many times, and I'm not telling you she's 100% on board or loves the idea, but she understands that what we both want is a safer St. Louis city and a safer St. Louis region.
We asked the mayor at this recent press conference if she's not entirely opposed because the city recently dropped a dismissed lawsuit against that state takeover.
Mark, the city didn't dismiss the lawsuit. It was dismissed by the courts. It was a faulty lawsuit. We're evaluating. This was filed the day before I took office. So we're in the process of evaluating the merits of the potential lawsuit and how we move forward with it. But the city didn't dismiss it. It was dismissed by the courts.
Joining us now is Board of Aldermen President Megan Green. Good to have you back with us at the start of this new session.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I wonder, what was the rush in filing this lawsuit against the state takeover?
It really wasn't a rush. If you recall, the law had passed about a month and a half prior. And as soon as we knew it was gaining traction, likely to pass, as soon as we knew what the final language was in that bill, the mayor's office, our office, the city councilor's office started working together to put together the best case that we thought we could put together to challenge it.
Why leave you knew Kara Spencer was the mayor-elect.
Correct.
At the time. Why leave her out of those legal strategy discussions?
Well, I don't think it's leaving her out at all. We started this with a former mayor. As soon as we filed, we reached out to her office to let her know that we were going to file, that these were the things that we had reached consensus on with legal counsel, and asked her to sign on as a plaintiff, which I still hope that she will do.
I don't know that, well, I guess we'll wait and see. I'm not sure that she will. It sounds like she won't. Perhaps it sounds like she wants to file a different suit altogether. A federal judge appointed to the bench by President Trump suggested that maybe your lawsuit was filed in a frivolous nature. Have you seen this?
I have seen this, yes.
The judge wrote that it was his judgment this may have been filed, quote, primarily for local media consumption or to solely engage in political protest, and that a jurisdictional issue present he found was so glaring that a first-year law student would be able to recognize it, assuming here that it was filed in a shoddy fashion, sort of in a rush. Was here it is, hastily filing a slipshod action in federal court, and now wants you in the city to explain some of these errors. What is the explanation?
So let's be clear what the federal judge actually took issue with, and that was that he was supposing that we could not sue the state of Missouri, that rather we had to name the attorney general and the governor specifically in the lawsuit. And so that is what he brought to our council as the issues with it, which are not really substantive issues. We really think that we are clear that this is a violation of the Hancock Amendment, and that any efforts to muzzle elected officials and our ability to advocate for our constituents is a clear violation of the First Amendment. And so, while this is not a surprising result for him, we are going to move forward because we know that these are areas that I think that the law that was passed are particularly vulnerable.
So it sounds like, just for our audience who may be following, you're suggesting that if the suit says, instead of suing the state of Missouri at the top of the header, you just change that out to sue the governor,
Correct.
Sue the attorney general, sue someone specifically, and then maybe you'd have jurisdictional standing. So let's dig into the substance for a moment.
Sure.
Your lawsuit says that the Hancock Amendment bars basically a state mandate. The state can't require the city to spend
Correct.
X on policing.
Correct.
But immediately once your lawsuit was filed, I had lawyers calling me, lawyers who are not necessarily political, who are familiar with the crafting of the language, and they said, well, hang on a minute, this bill, as it's passed, the new state takeover bill, doesn't actually have a state mandate, in their opinion, because it doesn't say you must spend X on police. It says an amount equal to the city's police budget, the city's general revenue budget must be spent on police, and that could come from anywhere: federal funds, state funds, pension funds. It doesn't necessarily have to come out of the city's budget. Is that a fair?
I don't think that's a fair characteristic, because what it is saying is that it'll phase up to having to spend 25% of our general budget on that. And so
it just says an amount equal to. It doesn't say you must expend that fund.
How that impacts the city budget is, if that were to be in effect today, we would be looking at about a $40 million budget hole. That is concerning for residents of our city who want to make sure that trash is picked up, that want to make sure that our health department is funded, that want to make sure that, we have a functioning city services throughout our city. And as soon as you start to say, well, you have to spend, X percentage of your budget on this, especially when we're heading into a recession, especially when we have a lot of unforeseen circumstances around our budget at the moment, that could have a direct impact on our ability to provide other city services.
And a lot of us are waiting to see what posture Mayor Spencer takes on this. It sounds like, if we're hearing her correctly, that she's evaluating what she thinks could be a better lawsuit, a stronger lawsuit, and in her view, she thinks this lawsuit was a weak one, a bad one. If she files a better lawsuit, would you consider dropping this one, or could it be effective to have a two-headed fight here?
I think that we have merits in the lawsuit that we have. If she finds other avenues that she thinks should also be included in this lawsuit, I want to hear it. I know that we have our legal counsel, both from the city councilor's office and from Attorney Chuck Hatfield, who has worked on these issues for decades, who are both confident that the two areas that we are suing in are the ones that have the most propensity for fruit from those lawsuits. But if there are other avenues that the mayor would like to look at, I am all open to that. I think at the end of the day, we have to be fighting to protect residents and taxpayers in this city. And in order to do that, we cannot allow this law to go unchecked. A
lot of new bills being refiled at the Board of Aldermen, a lot of big changes on the horizon, important debates. Last question before we let you go.
Sure.
Can you promise that the city will spend or appropriate the Rams money in the next 2 years?
In the next 2 years, I think so. I think allocate, yes.
You may not get it all out the door,
right?
Projects take time.
And I think we need to be honest that ARPA has to be the first priority, and all ARPA dollars must be spent by December 31st, 2026. And so for all of us in city government, we're saying we got to get those dollars out the door first, because we don't want to lose them. We won't lose the Rams money if it's sitting there. All it does is grow and produce more income. So I think you will see an allocation bill come forward, but I don't know that you will see those funds actually be spent until after all ARPA dollars are expended.
All right, Board of Aldermen President Megan Green, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We're back in just a moment. One constant in American politics, it's always election season. And this week, a high-profile race in Illinois just got a lot more interesting. U.S. Senator Dick Durbin announced he will not run for re-election in 2026, bringing his decades-long career to an eventual end. The East St. Louis native is currently the second top Democrat in the U.S. Senate, serving in that chamber since 1996 and the House since 1983. During a Thursday press conference, he said voters get to pick his replacement.
We're lucky we have a strong Democratic bench. I mean it. You've heard some names already. Believe me, you're going to hear more, because they've been calling over the last several months and talking about the fact they wouldn't run against me, but they wanted my blessing to run. I'm not planning on endorsing any particular candidate. I hope I don't have to, but I'm not ruling out the possibility in an extreme case. I just think it's up to the voters. And they took a risk with me. I'm a downstate Democrat. That's kind of a vanishing breed when you consider federal office, particularly the United States Senate. And many of them had never heard of me. A fellow named Paul Simon blessed me with his endorsement, and I moved forward, and things worked out for the best. Look at Tammy Duckworth's background. Asian American, veteran, what she's done as background. I mean, it's up to the voters to decide what's right and who the right person is. I'm not going to make that decision.
A vanishing breed. Just 24 hours after Durbin announced, one of Illinois' top leaders made an announcement of her own. Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton officially launched her campaign to be the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate. She's one of the many ambitious politicians as a possible contender to take Durbin's spot.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk are trying to distract us, to create such a mess that we don't even know where to start. But in Washington, they're still doing the same old things they've always done. And that old playbook isn't working. I'm Juliana Stratton, the daughter of a teacher and a Navy veteran from the South Side of Chicago. Now I'm running for Senate because the only way out of this mess is to bring new energy, new voices, and new leaders who understand the lives of working people.
A well-produced video like that, very likely produced and prepared before that announcement. Other possible picks right there on your screen. Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, perhaps Robin Kelly, and maybe even former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel. Plus, maybe a Republican like Darren LaHood might jump into the Republican side. More on that later. He described Durbin's departure as, quote, long overdue, and said Illinoisans have long known him as the face of Washington dysfunction, pushing liberal policies. Perhaps a preview of what a runoff might look like in a general election if he was to become the candidate. We're back after this. Another constant in polling, infrastructure is incredibly popular. Now leaders at the local and federal levels are addressing these distressing signs of decline in St. Louis. Congressman Wesley Bell joined Mayor Kara Spencer alongside Alderman Rasheen Aldridge for this press conference in front of this massive sinkhole, a gaping hole in the ground in the streets of North St. Louis. This one near 17th and Cass, going 20 feet deep. In total, 3 sinkholes have popped up across the city in recent days. Spencer and Bell, both new on the job, eager to show their hands-on with their approach to these big issues.
Some of the infrastructure is over a centuries years old or what have you. And so it's going to take more than just some patch and glue and move on.
That was our first priority, was making sure that nobody was going to get injured by putting up the barricades. That was our top priority.
Bell said he signed on to the Sinkhole Mapping Act in Congress, which urges the U.S. Geological Survey to scan and survey for any potential danger zones and hopes the experts can prevent massive holes like this from opening up and threatening public safety. A budget battle is brewing in St. Louis County. This week, St. Louis County Executive Sam Page addressed pressing budget deficits and suggested some projects could be cut. As county leadership weighs the possibility of the slashing spending, one leader on the council has already expressed interest in running against Page. Last month, Councilwoman Shalonda Webb told us on this program she's weighing that decision.
I think that this is an odd-numbered year and elections are an even-numbered year, and we all need to get to work and run the county and worry about elections next year.
Do you plan to seek re-election?
Yes.
Another council member who might also want Page's job, Republican Councilman Dennis Hancock, announced he might run for the GOP nomination for county executive. The federal corruption trial of Illinois State Senator Emil Jones III hit a snag Thursday when jurors deadlocked. They sent a note to the judge saying they are not able to reach unanimous agreement on all the charges against him. The counts allege that Jones had agreed to accept bribes in exchange for limiting legislation that would study the red light camera industry and then later lied to the FBI about it. We're back in a moment.
The record speaks for itself.
Indeed it does, and this veteran trial lawyer would know. He's the second-ranking Democrat on Capitol Hill. Dick Durbin says he's stepping away, opening the door for a new generation to run for statewide office. He's East St. Louis's own. Senator Dick Durbin announcing he would not run for another 6-year term. So let's check the record.
Thank you very much.
For 44 years, more than half of his lifetime, Dick Durbin worked on Capitol Hill, representing voters from the land of Lincoln. He earned his political savvy the hard way, starting his career the same way Lincoln did.
I never underestimate an opponent. I lost 3 elections before I ever won one.
And then won every election since then, holding himself out to the public as a man of the people.
I'm not personally wealthy.
Durbin caught his stride early on, relating to people's pain.
If you have seen an increase in your heating bill from last year by more than $100, and almost everybody has.
In the early Obama years, Durbin pushed for raising taxes on the wealthy in a so-called Warren Buffett tax.
Certainly on those who are wealthy and comfortable and wouldn't even notice it, yes.
That idea, and his pushes to regulate big banks that tax credit card users with high rates or costly fees.
Get the heck out of that bank.
Those still live on today.
And I'm glad to be back.
Durbin never forgot his roots.
My old hometown of East St. Louis.
And routinely represented the needs of downstate Illinois, a region that often feels forgotten.
I'm confident at the end of the day that the people in Southern Illinois are going to get the assistance which they need.
Those instincts he learned from his mentor and predecessor, former Senator Paul Simon.
There wasn't a town too small in Illinois for him to visit. People, I think, even the most conservative towns felt like he was one of their own.
Even as he ascended the ranks of power in Washington, Durbin remained laser-focused on local politics, famously picking a battle with the former mayor of East St. Louis, who at the time refused to shut down late-night nuisance social clubs.
Let me tell you, is it worth $140,000 to have people gunned down in the streets every other week in East St. Louis?
Like most successful politicians,
Does anybody here have yellow on?
Durbin knew how to work a room, but he also knew how to pick a fight.
If it's unhealthy to have secondhand smoke on an airplane, it's unhealthy to have it in a hospital.
He took on industries with powerful lobbyists and won.
This product, these e-cigarettes, electronic cigarettes, are appealing to children.
And when tragedy struck at a local school,
Let's make it a little more difficult for a troubled child to get his hand on a gun.
Durbin rallied support across the nation.
To create a national safety standard for the storage of guns.
He hammered the issue of gun violence on the stump.
No political official in this state should ever be cowed by the gun extremist.
And in Congress, eventually his alliance with Missouri Senator Roy Blunt would help deliver the first bipartisan federal gun bill in decades. Later, finding common ground with Senator Josh Hawley on regulating big tech and social media.
Their constant pursuit of engagement and profit over basic safety have all put our kids and grandkids at risk.
But he also recognized the risk of banning TikTok outright, issuing this early warning sign for Democrats in 2024.
Successful politics is addition to multiplication, and cutting out a large group of young voters is not the best known strategy for re-election.
That sense and savvy served him well, earning his place in top spots for some of the country's most defining political battles of the last 4 decades, from the Clinton impeachment
Well, I think if the House votes to move forward on this impeachment inquiry, they should do it the right way.
to the Tea Party's push to shut down the government,
This is the most outrageous suggestion I have heard.
to high-stakes hearings on confirming justices to the Supreme Court,
Most Americans question whether we need a Supreme Court justice with the vision of Donald Trump.
Durbin somehow always found his way to the center of the issue of the day and brought voters along for the ride, like in this press conference on climate change.
It's obvious something's happening here, and we're fools to ignore it.
Durbin also showed grace and collegiality to his Republican counterpart, Senator Mark Kirk, after he suffered a stroke.
I don't know what his timetable is, but I'm glad that he is still actively associating himself with a lot of issues.
And he dug into wonky issues like federal staffing levels in the Food and Drug Administration.
It's cold comfort to people know that we have a good law in the books if we don't have the people to make it work.
After a surge of convictions during the Clinton era, Durbin reconsidered the party's stance on drug crimes.
Clearly there are people incarcerated who are not a danger.
And he defended party leadership even when they were struggling in public.
His performance tells me he's up to the job and does it well.
Durbin seemed to see the pressure of high prices shaping the electorate in this last presidential race.
Are we out of the woods? Not quite. We're still dealing with inflation.
And like most politicians with long careers, you could sometimes find him taking positions on many sides of an issue over the years.
It was an immigrant population that gave us our diversity and our strength as a nation.
Durbin both criticized and defended parts of President Biden's record on immigration.
But what's the answer on the domestic side? Is it to process people faster or to limit the flow at the start?
It's all of the above. The current flow of refugees into the United States is unsustainable. The simple fact of crossing the border and perhaps having a technical legal violation at that point is being used as a basis for deportation of people who otherwise have nothing in their background.
And in his younger years, you could even hear early seeds of that America First sentiment.
One fellow on the sandbag line said, "Congressman, would it help if we were a foreign country? Could we get the disaster rate a little more quickly?"
At the core of his political base was organized labor.
I think they were a little surprised to see a room full of people who have been some of the biggest boosters for McDonnell Douglas saying, "What are you doing here? To take jobs away from our area and transfer them to Mesa, Arizona, it's not fair to the workers."
And his message was never far removed from that next thing on the mind of everyday workers.
There are just too many families in this state who are one illness, one accident, and one paycheck away from financial disaster.
Dick Durbin was an advocate, a translator, a statesman who knew what voters wanted most from Congress.
The American people have said, for God's sake, do something.
And a downstate Democrat. Will we ever see another one in the Senate? He calls them a vanishing breed, but he's not gone yet. A lot of time left to still put him on the record and ask him some tough questions. That's all of our time this week. We're back next week, same time. Until then, we're off the record.